all the major indices kind of moving a little bit more in positive direction. The Dow's up a full 13 points right now. Everything else is negative, but I guess, I mean, the headline is Europe. Everything's about Europe. I said that earlier. I don't. If you follow my stock picks that I post every Monday, I update my stock picks on my webpage. If you follow that, and I also have a commentary section to that every Monday morning. And I said that this week's all going to be about two things. It's going to be about Europe, and it's going to be about Friday's job numbers. And sure enough, I mean, it's Europe certainly today. The data, the economic data that's come out of the U.S. this week that has been somewhat negative, well, not somewhat negative, has been negative, has come out today that has been negative, certainly is a factor. But when you dig deep into the opinions and what we're seeing, it's all going to Europe. People are concerned. And rightly so. We're seeing more and more issues coming out of Europe. We're seeing Spain. It's very interesting that Spain right now, nearly 3 months after Spain requested $100 billion euro, 100 billion euro. That's about 126 billion euro or dollars. After they got this bailout, remember I talked about it. I said, listen, this is a bailout of the banking system, right? It's going to last about a month, I said. I was wrong. It's about 3 months. They got more mileage out of it than I thought. Well, now, guess what? The problems, I'm reading from the Wall Street Journal, the problems facing the country's frail banking system are deepening, do you think? Putting pressure on the Europe Central Bank to take action this week. When will they learn to stop throwing money down the rat hole? It's unbelievable. They continue to do this. Do they really think? I mean, isn't it amazing how politicians around the world don't have the ability to look at a situation and say, you know what? You guys are in big trouble. I see that. But the $100 billion that you want isn't going to help. You need like $200 billion or $200 billion. You need more like $1 trillion. The $100 billion is not going to help. And you're going to be with your hand out. So, all right, guys around the table, here's the deal. Do we want to give them the $100 billion, or should we just say, oh, well, go bankrupt, suffer, struggle, get in trouble, lay people off, do what you got to do? But we don't want to give you this $100 billion because we know in a month or two we're going to have to give you another 100. And then in a month or two from that, we're going to have to give you another 100 million, and on and on. So what happens is there's still this continuing mass exodus. Nobody's depositing any money in Spanish banks. That's killing them. And, customers continue to get more and more nervous about the lack of deposits and the problems the banks are having. So now you've got Spain talking about a sovereign bailout. That would mean a bailout of the government because they can't pay their bills. They're facing, the European central banks are now facing, well, I guess we got to give Spain more money. So they're going to end up giving them another $100 billion to kick the can for another 3 months. That's going to last about 3 months, I guess. And this is. Does anybody see the insanity in all this? And we're doing the same thing. We're doing the same thing. In a sense, we're doing sovereign bailouts. We're bailing the government out. I mean, so we've got $16 trillion worth of debt. We've added $5 trillion worth of debt only because, and okay, I won't say only. I'm gonna be a nice guy and say that $1 trillion of it, $1 trillion of the $5 trillion. Now, you know what? I'll even be nicer than that. I'm going to say $2 trillion. $2 trillion of the $5 trillion, probably unavoidable. Okay, $2 trillion. But because of our refusal, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, both sides of the aisle, middle of the aisle, both left, both right, whatever, doesn't matter. Because they cannot. Do you understand, folks? They cannot cut the spending. If they cut the spending, and I'm not talking about all of them, I have to say that because I get all these emails. I'm not talking about all of them. I'm talking to, yes, I know there's 50, 60, I say it all the time, that are good guys that need to stay in office. I'm all for that. But they have to appease the special interest groups. They can't They can't cut something that is going to possibly lead to defunding one of their special interest groups. How can they do that? Oh, my word. They need the money they've contributed to their campaign to get reelected. I'm not talking about getting reelected in November. I'm talking about getting reelected in 2 years or getting reelected in 4 years. I'm talking about getting reelected. The only thing that matters is getting reelected. Nothing else matters. It doesn't matter about the United States of America's sovereign wealth or their ratings or anything else. None of that matters. It doesn't matter about unemployment or anything. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is I got to get reelected. So how can they cut? This has been a totally unwillingness to cut the spending. We're doing the same thing. Do you understand? We are bailing out America. We are bailing out America as taxpayers as we continue to run the printing press. See, we just run the printing press. Now, I've got to give the ECB a little bit of credit, not a lot, but a little bit of credit in the sense that they have been fighting, unwilling to run the printing presses. They've really been unwilling to do it. Now, they've been forced to do it to a certain extent, but it's not the road they want. We don't even care. We don't even think about it. We just run the printing press. It doesn't matter. So, 16 trillion, 25 trillion in debt. It's all irrelevant. Don't worry about it. Just keep on printing. Okay? So we're doing the same thing. And it is just insanity. It's insanity. Because of special interest groups in K Street. We talk about all the protests, the Wall Street protests. Would every protester listening to me today pack up your signs and go to K Street? K Street in Washington, D.C., that's where all the lobbyist offices are. Go down to K Street because that's where it all starts. You want to know where all the problems are? Go to K Street. You want to know why we have so much debt and we can't stop spending? Go to K Street. You want to know why politicians on both sides of the aisle constantly compromise on what is good for America? Go to K Street. What are you protesting Wall Street for? What are you running the Congress approval rating down to 10%? Go to K Street because that's where it all begins. And then go protest the special interest groups that are driving the agendas of the country. Go there. But we're doing the exact same thing. So I'm whining about what Spain and what's going on in Europe, and we're doing the exact same thing. Oh, man. It's just, it is insane. And I'm telling you, we don't see any, I don't see any way out of it. I don't see any desire to change it. Maybe Ryan and Romney, at least they're at least talking about it. At least they're talking about it. Talking about it is a lot more than the fact that the Obama administration is talking about change and hopelessness or hope. At least they're talking about it. But that change does not ever mention a contraction in the size of government, smaller government, leaner government, more efficient government. It doesn't talk about cutting the spending across the board. They're not talking about any of that because they don't want to go there. So at least you've got one party talking about it, another party that won't even consider it. Now, I don't know what the details of the plan for President Obama are to get us there without cutting. Now, I have a sneaky suspicion, though, that when you your household budgets, same thing here. When you manage your household budgets and you want to decrease your debt, you've got two options. There's only two. You can cut your expenses, okay, that would help, or you can increase your revenue, get a new job. That's it. You don't have any other choice. I mean, if you do, tell me about it. I mean, I guess you could borrow money, get more debt, and try. But they're your only two choices when it comes right down to it. So it's no different for the government. You've got a choice. You can either cut your spending or you can increase your revenues. Now, I'm just drawing a bit of a conclusion here. I'm just trying to connect some dots, and I may be wrong. So you've got one administration that is in power that is saying that we're going to change this, we're going to fix this. I hope they're right. I really do. I hope they're right. I hope that happens. I hope they change it. I hope the deficit begins to come down, and I hope everybody is fat and happy in another 2 years. I hope it happens. But they're not talking about cutting. it can only mean one thing, folks. If you're not talking about cutting, it can only mean that you've got some sort of plan, I don't know what it is, to generate revenues. Now, it can't be to tax the rich. That can be a part of it. You can do that, certainly. Will that raise some revenues? I don't think it will, because I think the very things that the rich do to create revenues, they're likely to do somewhere else. But nevertheless, it could, in the short term, maybe raise some revenues. Is it going to raise enough Is it going to create enough revenue? No, it is not. And even if you tax them 100% of their income, it's not going to create enough revenue. There's got to be other taxes or fees or there's other revenue streams on the table. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a VAT tax. I don't know if it's a national sales tax. I don't know what it is. But I do know for certain, and you too know for certain, because so many of us have been through this. I'm going to take you back again. Cut expenses, increase revenues. That's it. There's no other options. So if they're not cutting expenses, unless they're just going to do away with the military altogether, which is possible, it's got to come from somewhere, and it's going to come out of our hides. You can count on it. Anyway. I was talking, I think his name was Thomas, called me in reference to the Fed speak, and he saw some sort of debate about a currency war. My guess is the debate he saw was on YouTube or something like that. But why does it create a currency war? Here's the deal, Thomas. So the Fed trashes the dollar. In other words, they put more money into the system. They buy more money. They lower the value of the dollar. Here's the thing about lowering the value of the dollar. It makes our goods that we sell. So if we make a Caterpillar bulldozer here in America, and we ship that bulldozer to Spain or somewhere, it's cheaper to buy now. Okay, so that it creates an unfair trade issue, a trade imbalance. You know how we always accuse China of manipulating their currency? Well, see, we believe this isn't true, but we believe in the Keynesian mentality that we have, and our basic, I don't want to say fundamentals of economic principles, but we believe that China is intentionally keeping their dollar low, which they may be to a certain extent. It's their right. They're a communist nation. They can do whatever they want. So they may be doing that, okay, which gives them an unfair advantage when we go to Walmart and buy all the Chinese goods. So, or anywhere we go, tires, whatever it is. We couldn't be competitive with Chinese on tires, so we had to put a tariff on it. Solar panels, we couldn't be competitive. We had to put a tariff on it because, remember, there's exchange differences. Well, if we get into a global crisis, which we're just about in, a global competitiveness for every single dollar that they can get on an export, it means that everybody's got to be extremely competitive, which could bring rise to a currency war. In other words, everybody doing what China and America is doing. So we accuse China of manipulating our dollar. So what do? We manipulate our dollar by letting the Fed step in with quantitative easing. Timothy Geithner, at the same time we're doing quantitative easing and manipulating our dollar and driving the dollar value lower, he goes over and tells China to stop doing it. Hello? And China is saying, wait a minute, you're doing that too, right? So it creates an environment by where we have this desperate need to be competitive, and we have no choice but to begin to start a currency war and manipulation. So pretty soon the euro begins to get manipulated. Some of the northern European nations, we've got Australia, New Zealand, and Asia, and so on and so forth, and we end up in a currency war, at which case China probably wins that war. Anyway, let's go to break. We got a full board. We're going to get right to the phone. John from Texas, you're on deck, brother. Hang in there. 888-589-8840. You're listening to AFR Talk Financial Issues. My name's Dan Celia. Great to be here. All the major indices in positive territory. The Dow is now up 31. I'll try to tell you why when we get back. We'll be right back after this.
The 2012 elections will likely be the most important election in our lifetime. Your vote and your involvement are critical to get our nation back on the right course. On September 14th through the 16th at the Values Voter Summit in Washington, D.C., make your voice heard and stand for the values that make America strong. Majority Leader Eric Cantor, Representatives Paul Ryan and Michelle Bachmann, Senator Jim DeMint, Bill Bennett, General Jerry Boykin, Rick Santorum, Dinesh D'Souza, Lila Rose, and Dennis Prager are already confirmed. Invited